In this video, I'm going to show you how to attach sew-on snaps. Snaps are an alternative to using buttons. There are two different types. There's sew-on and there's no sew. So I'm going to be showing you how to do the sew-on snaps. So let's get started. Here are some snaps that are still on their packaging. I have 4 of them. And let me just show you the back real fast. So that's how the back looks. And you may get a little confused about which portion, if you have both halves of the snap. The thing is, they're already snapped together. So if I go ahead and pop the front and the back off, there's the bottom, here's the top. So on your project, on the bottom half of the project where you want to attach the snap, you would sew through these holes along the top and the sides. And then directly above where this snap is going to be placed, you have the top portion, and again you would sew through the holes. And if you did it correctly, when you put one flap on top of the other, and if they line up, they should snap together just like that. So this is a project that I'm going to be putting the snap on. It's actually just a prototype for this pouch I'm making. So what I'm going to do is, I have sewn on this flap. I'm going to lay it over the side, and then I use my sewing gauge to measure where in proportion to this I want to put my snap. Once I know that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a pin right where that spot is. I'm going to carefully lift the flap, and then where the pin is, I'm going to mark it with my fabric marker. Carefully turn this flap over and then mark it again where the pin is still sticking out of the fabric. So then that's where I'm marking it, is where I'm going to sew on each side of the snap. If I do it right, once I fold this over, they should snap together. Another thing I want to recommend is, if you're using a lining for your project, it's a good idea to put in the snaps before you put in the lining. The reason for this is that the lining will cover up any stitches you do on the back of your main piece of fabric. It just gives it a nicer look on the inside. So you have your snap here on the outside, and on the inside it's a cleaner look because that lining will then cover up those stitches that you make. I'm going to take the bottom half of my snap, and this is the one where the middle part rises up in the middle, and I'm going to lay it over my mark that I had made on my fabric, and then carefully hold it with one finger. And basically what I'm going to be doing is just like sewing a button, where I'm going to come up from underneath the fabric through the hole, then back down into the fabric. And I'm going to do this, I would do it at least 5 times. Then I'm going to move on to another hole and do a couple stitches there. Well, at least 5 times, if not more. And then do it for the other remaining 2 holes. What you really want to do is really secure the snap into your fabric, because you're probably going to be snapping and unsnapping it a lot, and you don't want this to come apart. So I'm going to take my threaded needle here, which has a knot at the end, and I'm going to try to find the first hole very carefully. I always end up sticking myself, so with one finger holding that there, you got to be careful. And then once I have it through, I'm just going to bring it back down, and it's going to be right on this other side of this ridge of the snap, the edge of it, if not a little bit underneath it. We don't want it too far, because we kind of want the stitches not to be really obvious and sloppy looking. They want to be really close to the snap. I'm just using black thread just so it might be a little bit easier to see, but you might want to use something that matches better. Okay. So now I'm going to go back down through the fabric. Try to hold your snap into place. It is hard because it is kind of slippery, and I just want to make sure it's still over the hole there. And then go back up through it. And back down. Now you really want to do it at least 5 times per hole, but just for demonstration purposes, so you don't see me do a ton of boring stitches, I'm going to only do 3 here, and then I'm going to move on to my next hole. Now you can tie a knot as you finish each one and then move on to the next hole. I probably recommend that if you're going to see the back of your fabric with your stitch marks. If you have a lining, it really doesn't matter. Like I'm gonna have a lining and nobody's gonna see the back of my stitching on the back, so it doesn't really matter, you know, if I happen to go across, which I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go directly across for my last hole, because then if I do the top and the bottom, the snap's gonna be a lot easier for me to sew the remaining 2 holes, because it'll pretty much, you know, be holding its spot for me. Once you get these 2 done, the snap's not gonna move around as much. So I'm gonna go ahead and do one more stitch, and then I'm gonna show you how to tie it off. Okay. So obviously, you know, I only did a few stitches, so it's not really that in there. But I will show you how to finish this. You're gonna flip it over. Here's my stitch marks like I was showing you, which you would see if you didn't have a lining. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your needle then and go through a couple of your stitches and pick up a little bit of fabric, just because I want my knot to be secured to something besides just my stitches. And this forms a loop, and you're going to bring your needle through that loop and then just pull the whole thing like that. And I always do it at least twice, since this probably is going to get a lot of wear, and we really want to make sure that snap does not fall off. And then I just cut it, or cut the thread. So I'm going to finish sewing on this snap, and then I'm going to show you how to do the top part. I'm not going to do the top portion. So here's the top of my snap. Now the hole is concave because it fits over the part in the middle that sticks up here on the bottom half. And I think it's a little bit actually harder to hold on to. It's a little slippier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my straight pin, and if you look at the very bottom of the concave circle here, there's a hole, and I'm going to stick my straight pin through that hole in the middle and then through my mark in my project, and just pull this, and the holes will go around, so it's not secured or anything like that, but at least it's not going to move off of this spot. I'm just going to hold the back of the pin to keep the snap in place. And then just like the bottom half, I'm going to go up through one hole, and then I'm going to go back down through it. And after I do a couple of holes here, I'm then going to test out my snap to make sure that it is indeed in the right position, because it's better to test it out after a couple of holes than to find out after you've done all 4 of them that your snap isn't quite in the right spot. I'm just going to do one more stitch on this side. And then, all right, now I'm going to move to the bottom. If I could find the hole here, there we go. All right. So now I'm just gonna take out my pin, and I'm just gonna fold it over, find the snap. There. So it looks like it's in the right spot. So I'm going to take this apart now and be very careful, because I don't want to take out any stitches since I haven't really secured it. And I'm going to go ahead and finish stitching all of my holes then. I finished sewing on my snaps. So now if I was going to do a lining, this would be the time to do it, because now I could cover up these stitch marks here. I'm going to go ahead and close this. That matches great. Now you see my stitches on this part. That's because if I would have done this right, I would have put this portion of the snap just on the gray before sewing it to the exterior fabric of my flap and then attached it to here. I just did it this way so you can see and visualize how it would be on sewing it onto a flap. So that's how you sew on a sew-on snap.